Welcome to the Red Pill Sports and Entertainment Show, brought to you as usual by Open Source Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Alright guys, so last week we talked about the Gracie Academy or Gracie University band of products. We first reviewed the Gracie Combatives system, and this week we are going to talk about Gracie Bullyproof. Now, the whole reason why I decided to do a Gracie Combatives and then Gracie Bullyproof, why I decided on that order, is because essentially Gracie Bullyproof is Gracie Combatives minus a few techniques and plus a parent preparation course as well as Gracie games. Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry, they also have, I believe it's the rules of engagement. Okay, so the rules of engagement basically is like the Gracies teaching children when it's okay to use their jiu-jitsu. The Gracie games is basically how they implement their jiu-jitsu teaching. And it gives you, like, I think a total of 10 games. They're pretty standard type of drills. Really, what you're paying for between combatives and this particular set, in my opinion, is you're paying for the parent preparation course. Even more so than I think the Gracie games. The Gracie games do help because they do help you as a parent teach the jiu-jitsu, right? They basically give you a path or a layout of how to teach jiu-jitsu to your child. But the parent preparation course is something that is much, much more helpful. I think a lot of times parents who have never coached a youth sports team, have never been to a youth sports coaching clinic, sometimes don't quite understand. The thing is that most children do not operate well under constant critique. They need a lot of reassurance, and especially when it comes to some type of combat or self-defense training, they need to be encouraged to continue to go. They need to be praised that, hey, you're doing it right. I think a lot of people also don't realize that it's a little bit ridiculous to expect a child to do a lot of the jiu-jitsu techniques without flaw on the first time through, because adults don't even do that, right? It takes, a lifetime or, a chunk of lifetime to actually get good. I mean, it takes the average black belt, and I guess I shouldn't even say that. The typical black belt, it's taken them at least a decade to achieve. That's adult students. So to expect, perfection, to expect, efficiency immediately out of a child is just unrealistic, especially considering that you, as the parent using this system, is the one teaching them, and you probably don't know jiu-jitsu, or it's marketed that you don't need to know jiu-jitsu to teach your kid how to use it. So that can be somewhat problematic. So that brings me to my very first critique of the Gracie Bullyproof system. And my very first critique is that I think they market this to parents, and I think that the marketing is I'm not going to say it's fraudulent, but I think it's a bit misleading. It kind of makes it feel like you could teach your child jiu-jitsu through this program, and it almost makes it feel the way that they market it, that you would be able to do it without knowing jiu-jitsu yourself. And I just don't think that that's true. I mean, I really don't think that this product is meant for somebody who is never done jujitsu themselves before, like at an academy. I'm not talking about Gracie Combatives or some other home system. I'm talking about actually attended an academy. Now, if you've actually attended an academy and you've rolled for 6, 7, 8 months, this might be, and you think maybe your children might like to do jujitsu, this could be a worthwhile investment just to test it out, to see if they could like it. One of the things I really do enjoy about the Gracie Combative system is that it tries to keep everything in a play mode, which engages children much, much better, right, than strict mode. Now, of course, you have to be somewhat strict because you are talking about, martial arts, and you're talking about, hand-to-hand combat techniques. So you do have to be somewhat strict and disciplined. However, when you approach it from a play mode, when you approach it from a game mode, you make it more like a sport, more like playing catch outside with a football or a baseball, or, kicking a soccer ball around, and it's fun to do. It is going to capture kids' imagination a lot more. My personal opinion is that they only need a handful of techniques when you're talking about the elementary school age children. They need to maybe understand how to get out from the bottom of the fight, meaning they need to know the trap and roll. They need to know maybe an elbow escape or the basics of that escape, because, kids are still growing and not super coordinated, so they just need to be able to unbalance the person on top of them enough to get out from underneath them. And then they need to understand, when they do get on top, how to maintain that top position. Then the reality is for most kids in elementary school, if they can maintain the top position, many times that's going to get the aggressor or the bully to just stop. I also like the idea and the concepts behind controlling the person underneath you rather than hitting this person, because I, of course, don't want my child hurting their hands or hurting their elbows. But not only that, it somewhat avoids any maybe legal repercussions, or at least I think mitigates it, if you can very honestly say, hey, look, everything that was trained out of the idea that we were going to be as non-violent as possible, right? It's a control tactic. So I think it gives gives you plausible deniability, if you will, that, hey, well, if my kid happened to strike, or, in the process of holding your kid down, your kid hit their head, well, that's incidental. I don't know what else to say. Your child tried to attack my child defended themselves, and then try to control them so that they couldn't hit them anymore. I think that's a very viable, thing that could happen, and I like that aspect of it. To where when you look at, using Taekwondo, or using, any kind of kicking or punching, boxing, striking type of art, if your kid punches that kid, in today's litigation society, unfortunately, people won't see it as these are kids being kids. Okay. So, the long and short of it is that it is a very good program if you as a parent already have a basic foundation of jiu-jitsu. And when I say basic foundation, I really do mean a basic foundation. If you understand how to shrimp, if you understand how to move, you understand how to do a technical stand-up, if you've sparred a few rounds, if you've been submitted a few times, if you've caught 1 or 2 submissions of your own, if you've swept somebody or been swept, a handful of times, to where you understand how to execute the technique, and you've sparred some, this is a really good program for you to help get your children into jiu-jitsu. Okay. It's also could be a really good supplemental program if your child does jiu-jitsu, but your particular school or academy already focuses heavily on the gi and focuses heavily on sport jiu-jitsu and tournament style jiu-jitsu. Okay, and the reason why I say tournament style is because a lot of times in tournament style, they're not really that concerned with controlling the person as much as they're concerned with trying to get a submission, right? So if you want a little bit more emphasis on self-defense, I think this is a great program. However, I would say that if you've never done jiu-jitsu yourself, if you've never actually gone to an academy, attended academy for 6 months to a year, somewhere in that window, I would not recommend this. Okay, you're not going to be able to effectively teach jiu-jitsu to your children when you don't understand how the concepts work yourself. Okay, I know they market it that way, but if truth be told, I think that it should be by parents who already know jiu-jitsu. And at the very least, if you don't know jiu-jitsu, it should at least be at the very least that you've grappled somehow. Maybe wrestled in high school or wrestled in college, or had a club wrestling, and when I say wrestling, I mean true actual wrestling, not wrestling like, me and my cousins used to go out on the grass and roll around, right? And punch each other and hold each other down and, give each other noogies and stuff like that. That's not what type of wrestling I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual, real, true wrestling where a coach taught you techniques, okay? Because you're going to understand, the ideas and concepts of having a base and having a foundation and taking that foundation away to roll people over. So anyhow, that's the review for Gracie Bullyproof. Next week we will be covering the Women Empowered, and then the week following that I'm going to give you my overall grade on the entire system. Okay, so Gracie Bullyproof, if you have access to nothing else, I guess you could use it. However, that being said, because I feel like only somebody who's already familiar with jiu-jitsu can really use this as an adequate tool, can use this tool properly, I'm going to say that this is more of about a 3.5 stars out of 5-star program, but still probably the highest rating you could probably get for a children's bully proof or self-defense system that was an at-home system where the parent had no knowledge of the martial art itself. I think this would probably be the highest rated one, but even at that, it's still only a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So with that, let's move on to UFC 230, the results. So I went 2-2, guys. Not spectacular, but for the fights I picked, I guess 500 isn't too bad. The main event pretty much went the way that I think everybody thought the main event would go, which was Daniel Cormier getting Derek Lewis down to the ground, pretty much rode him for about a round and a half, and then finally submitting him. Pretty uneventful. So that's all we got to go on as far as that fight is concerned. But this does kind of bring up some questions in regards to what's next for Daniel Cormier. Here's the thing with Daniel Cormier. The talk is that he's going to fight Brock Lesnar in March, his retirement fight, riding off into the sunset. Most likely he'll beat Brock. He's a much better boxer. He's at least as good of a wrestler. And I would argue he's a much better MMA wrestler, right? Because there's differences in the style when you have to incorporate the idea of, getting punched, getting kicked, different submission holds, fighting off of your back. I think he's a much better MMA wrestler. He's a better kickboxer. I mean, you name it, across the board. The only thing Brock is going to have is pretty much that he's going to be bigger and stronger. And we saw what DC did to a bigger, stronger Derek Lewis that has much better striking, much better timing, and looked like he carries a lot more power than Brock Lesnar. We saw what he did to Derek Lewis. We saw what he did against a very good wrestler, very good MMA wrestler, and a very good boxer in Stipe, he found the hole in his game. So to think that if he had an entire camp that he's not going to make short work of Brock Lesnar is just kind of silly. Like, he's going to make short work of him. Here's my critique, though, for DC. I'm not going to say that DC's scared in the sense like a cowardly scared, like he's afraid. But DC is scared in the sense that he's too self-aware of his own legacy. What I mean by that is that he's basically walking away. He's basically trying not to fight John Jones. He's trying not to rematch with Stipe. And the reason why is because those two guys present matchup issues for DC. Well, he can clearly overcome them. We saw him fight very well against John Jones, even though he lost in the second fight. He was fighting very well against John Jones. He already knocked out Stipe. But the problem is, on a matchup standpoint, they give him probably some of the biggest threat, as well as Curtis Blades in the heavyweight division. Now, again, you can't tell me that DC is looking for money fights. You can't convince me that he's also looking for the best fighters, because if we're going to be honest, Derek Lewis, Brock Lesnar are not the best fighters in the heavyweight division. I don't want to hear their argument that Stipe got knocked out in the first round, and I don't want to hear how that doesn't deserve a rematch, because if you're telling me Brock is more deserving of fighting DC based on his resume, that's just utterly ridiculous. I mean, if we're really going to talk about who deserves a shot, if you're not going to go with Stipe, it has to be Curtis Blades. It has to be Curtis Blades. And the fact that it's not Curtis Blades, that DC's not willing to fight him, I'm not saying that DC is scared in a cowardly way, but I think he is way too self-aware of his own personal legacy. And I think that what it's actually going to do is tarnish his legacy more so than elevate his legacy. So that's all I got on DC, guys. So let's move on. I'm going to do these in the order of least exciting, or at least for myself. So next was the David Branch, Jared Cannonier fight. Pretty much we saw Cannonier win the way I thought he could win, and David Branch do exactly what I said he couldn't do, which was get sloppy. He shot from too far away. He got himself set up in a bad position. He, rather than rebounding and retracting and getting all the way out, he stayed inside the pocket. He anticipated what Cannonier was going to do rather than actually defending what he did, and he got knocked out. I mean, he got hit, took a big punch, and pretty much that was the end of the fight. Really uneventful, not super exciting. But what this does say, what I did see though, is Cannonier does have a lot better timing than we thought. He also had very good takedown defense, clearly. Otherwise, he couldn't set up that knockout. So maybe he's going to be an emerging title contender. We'll see how the next fight or two goes for him. But overall, I would think this is going to put Branch out of the top 10. Next was the Chris Weidman-Jacare Souza fight. Now, this fight was really, really interesting. Again, Chris got caught doing exactly the same thing he did against Gegard. For the first couple of rounds, he was moving well, in and out. It was back and forth battle. He wasn't staying stationary. However, when he got clipped, he had moved in. He got stationary. All Jacare needed was that moment in time to land that big overhand, and bam, he rocked him and pretty much ended the fight, right? Think that this stoppage came a little bit late, but it is what it is. I know a lot of people are critical of the refs. I'm pretty much on the side of, I do think this was a late stoppage. I don't like seeing fighters take a lot of damage that way. That being said, I always would prefer a ref to allow a fighter to try and fight back and give him every opportunity than to stop it early. And the reason why is in MMA, this is not boxing. There's no, oh, we knock you down and then you get a stand up and I give you, a count, an 8 count or whatever, right? This isn't boxing. It's MMA. So if I call the fight, if I step in, the fight is over as a referee. So I really think that, sometimes we can be overcritical as fans and people outside looking in of these refs. But I did think the stoppage was a little bit late. Next, the most exciting fight I think of the night for fans, for MMA fans, was the Derek Brunson Israel Adesanya fight. Derek Brunson did exactly what I thought he should do to win the fight, which was he tried to wrestle. He tried to wrestle Israel. And what we learned was the hype is real. Adesanya did a spectacular job of defending takedowns, using distance management to stay out of shot range from Brunson, timing him. It was an amazing fight. If you haven't seen this fight, I would really suggest you go back and watch this fight. I really don't want to spoil it for you, but I mean, all I can say is that Adesanya looks to be the real deal. Brunson by far was the best wrestler he's faced, and he dismantled him. I mean, he got the performance of the night bonus. So if you have a chance, you really want to check out this fight. If you didn't get to see it, whatever you have to do to watch a fight, I'm not going to tell you to do anything shady, but you really do want to check out this fight, guys. So that's pretty much it for UFC 230 and what happened within UFC 230. Coming up next, we got some different fights coming up on FS1 cards. We have the UFC Fight Night. There's a few fights that are a little bit interesting there. We got Pennington versus Durandamy. We got Donald Cowboy Cerrone versus Perry. Honestly, I don't understand why that's not the main event of that card, but hey, whatever, I don't put it together. We have Borg versus Benavidez. That should be a pretty fun fight to watch. And then on the prelims on FS1, there's not really too many more exciting fights there, or on the Fight Pass, but that main card on FS1, that's going to be a really fun card. Next, you have UFC Fight Night. You have Magny versus Ponzinibbio. Sorry about that, guys. A little bit tough to pronounce his name. That's supposed to be the main card. It's a little bit of an interesting fight. We'll see if Magny is really, on his trek back up into the top 5 or whatever, because, he is a good fighter. He's very exciting to watch. Other than that, I don't see a lot of, really interesting fights at this point, but you never know. You know how the cards can change from month to month. And then we have UFC Fight Night. We have this Curtis Blades versus Ngannou. I think this is an absolutely horrible fight for Ngannou. I think that Curtis Blades is basically, I don't think he quite has the exact same power as Ngannou, but he can definitely knock you out. And I think that overall, when you look at the rest of the game, the striking game, he's just a better fighter all around. He's a better, more well-rounded fighter. And then we have a couple things coming up. We have the Ultimate Fighter finale coming up. We have another UFC Fight Night December 1st. And then we have UFC 231. And I think that's the card that everybody's going to be looking at. It's going to be interesting to see how the pay-per-view buys stack up for 231 if there's no injuries versus, or at least no injuries to the main card, versus how 230 ended up doing. And the reason why I say that is because, again, I go back to this idea that DC is not in it for the money. He says he wants to make some money fights. He says he wants to fight the best guys. Yet that card, I just don't think it did very well. I'm not sure what the final numbers were. I'm going to have to look it up. But I'm pretty positive they weren't that great. I know most of the fans that I associate with were not about to pay for that card, so I think they might have had a hard time moving the card. So anyhow, it'd be interesting to see how UFC 231 does in regards to it, because we're constantly sold that the lighter weight classes don't move as well. We're told, like, Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, they're not as big a draws, but they're the main event of the night. And so we'll see if they really are, the biggest card. Then we have Shevchenko versus Jędrzejczyk. I don't know if I'm saying that completely right, but that should be a good fight as well. I think super interesting. I think everybody's going to want to check out that fight. It's the number one flyweight against basically what should be the title holder. So it's basically a title fight here. They're calling this a title fight, and it should be awesome. I'm super looking forward to that fight. It should be very, very interesting. So anyhow, guys, that's all we got on the UFC front. Let's MMA. Sorry, guys. One more thing in MMA. If you didn't know, okay, Floyd Mayweather will be fighting Tenshin Nasukawa, okay, I believe it's going to be in Tokyo, okay. If you don't know who Tenshin is, you need to YouTube the guy. He is an amazing young prospect. He's like 20 years old. I think they call him like a karate prodigy or something like that. He does fight MMA. He's like 4 or 5-0. I can't remember exactly. And I think he's like 20-0 in kickboxing. I by far think that this fighter is the most dangerous fighter that Floyd could have picked that is not a straight boxer. I think that Floyd's speed and quickness advantage is nullified and is non-existent against Tenshin. Maybe when Floyd was in his 20s, he would have still been quicker. But he's going to really have to rely on the idea of angles and, timing against Tenshin. And I just don't know. I mean, honestly, this is, if I could compare it, okay, if I could point boxing fans to somebody, think of Tenshin as an amateur version of Lomachenko, right? As far as his speed and his quickness and his understanding of fighting, okay? In very early Lomachenko. Think of him that way, okay? He is smaller than Floyd, but I don't think that that's going to play a huge role. Tenshin is generally the smaller guy. This is going to be, like I said, I think is the most dangerous fighter outside of a pure boxer that Floyd could be fighting. All right, guys. Well, we'll pick that apart a little bit more later, get into it more. Some really interesting stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about, the college football and what went on this weekend, as well as some of the news that happened last week, so that, we can get a red pill version of what's going on in the world. All right, guys, let's get into it. All right, so what went on in college football this weekend, right? So we had number 1 Alabama destroying, or not destroying, but really dominating number 3 LSU. You had Clemson over Louisville. Notre Dame beat Northwestern. Michigan put it on Penn State. Georgia over Kentucky, and Oklahoma over Texas Tech. Washington State over California, and Ohio State over Nebraska. Now, that's about as deep as I'm going to go. Those are basically the top 10 teams in the country, and they pretty much, almost everybody held par except for, I believe it was LSU, of course, and then you also had Kentucky losing as well. So, that wasn't great for them. But let's talk about what this means for the college playoff ranking. So that came out last week, and you got Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame, and Michigan on the outside looking in. Now, the problem is you still have all of these SEC fanboys making up reasons why Alabama should be number 1. when in all reality, it should be Clemson. Clemson should be number one. Alabama should maybe be number two. I would even argue maybe number three, fighting for a position with Notre Dame, and Michigan number four. Georgia, I guess we could talk Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU could all be in that conversation. But the reality is LSU, after that loss, they shouldn't be anywhere near the top 5. They should maybe be in the top 10. I wouldn't even give them top 10, to be completely honest. I would probably put them out of the top 10. I'd probably move UCF up into the top 10 and drop LSU out. The problem is that you have too many SEC fanboys running around, and you have them in the college playoff committee, and they're running around and they do everything they can to undermine anybody that could challenge the SEC. By far, Michigan has played a tougher schedule than Alabama, by far. Okay, I think, the one quality win they have right now is against LSU. That's the only one quality win they have. And I mean by the eyeball test, not by how they're deciding they're going to rank people. I was listening to Joel Klatt talk the other day, and he was saying how, on average, the college football committee has Big Ten teams ranked, on average, 16 places below every other ranking system. That's not good. That's not good for college football. That's not good for the competitive nature. Essentially, what they're doing is they continuously move the goalposts as to what is playoff worthy, what is championship worthy, what does determine the best team in the land, right? When the SEC is strong, it's, the SEC is so strong, this, and that, blah, blah. Yeah, you could have one lost team and they could still be the best college football team, or even a 2-loss team, and they could be the best football team in the country. When they're bad, when the SEC is bad, and you have one team that's dominant, or maybe two teams that are dominating, right? Then all of a sudden it's, domination's what matters. Domination's what matters. So it's going to be interesting to me to see what they do with the gigantic Michigan win. Okay, Notre Dame holding par. They had some trouble with Northwestern, if we're being completely honest. And I do root for Notre Dame. Like, they're one of the teams I do follow. But if we're being honest, they had some trouble with Northwestern. So I don't know how much that's going to hurt them. Georgia looked good. But again, it's just way too much SEC love. And that's not to say that there's not good teams in the SEC. Okay, but they're about par when it comes to good teams and bad teams. They have about the same amount of good teams as every other power conference, and they have about as many bad teams as every other power conference. And it just gets really old as a overall college football fan, from the outside looking in, see teams not ever get a shot. For instance, let's talk about UCF. UCF has been consistently putting on the field pretty competitive teams. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that they've gone perfect or one loss every single year. But all in all, for the last maybe 5-6 years, last handful of years, they've been putting on very competitive teams onto the field. Very exciting teams. Teams that you want to watch play football. And as a fan of college football as a whole, it seems really sad that you get, because of the TV deals, because of the championships, because of all of that, because of those things that kids have to think about. I'm not blaming the kids for thinking about those things. But you get a guy that's a third-string running back on Alabama, or at Clemson or at LSU, right, that he might see the field all of maybe 5 to 8 snaps a game, right, when he could have gone to UCF and been a starter. But because he knows that UCF is never going to have a shot, never, because of the way the system is rigged, he'll never have a shot to play for a national championship. Essentially, UCF would not only have to go undefeated, but everybody above them would have to lose probably 3 games for them to get into the playoff. And when you think about it in those terms, it's just completely unfair. I'm tired of college football fans that like it the way it is, selling me about how every game is a playoff. No, it's not. If that were true, you wouldn't have had a 1-loss LSU team ranked above a no-loss Notre Dame and no-loss UCF team. No, every game does not matter. Because the truth of the matter is that some teams and some conferences just matter more than others. And it doesn't matter who they play, and it doesn't matter who they beat, just because they have a history and because they have a fan base. Let's not forget how much media and media money, right? Network money plays a role. Mega bucks. So this is why it's just not good. And it's about time the NCAA grew a pair and stepped in on behalf of the smaller schools and put in and instituted in an actual real playoff system. All right, guys. So red pill alert. I know everybody is going to be really upset by this statement, but here is the thing. So last week they were talking about the Maryland football coach leaving or being asked to step down or being fired, whatever you want to call it, the Maryland football program. And I'm here to give you a red pill moment. The reality is that guy should have never lost his job. You can tell when you start doing research into something when there's a narrative trying to be spun in the media. And part of this all goes back to the softening of our male youth in America. And it's a travesty, okay? Now, I'm not going to say that it's not a, sad day that a football player died on a football field. But you can tell by what's not being reported, which facts are being left out of stories by the media to know that this is a railroad. They're trying to railroad this coach because there's a narrative to be pushed, and that narrative is football is too rough, it's too tough, wah. Let's go after masculinity, let's go after discipline, let's go after being too quote unquote hard on kids, and specifically in this case boys. Okay, they talk about all these different things about, oh well, it was a culture of intimidation. It was a well, yeah, it's called being coached. It's your coach's job to make you push past the limits that you think you have. Let me just talk for a second about some of the facts that are not being included or how they're being glossed over. One of the things that they're telling you is that, well, there was a systemic problem, but they can't seem to give you any specifics about what the systemic problem was. Now, systemic meaning part of the system, right? So this was a heat casualty. So one would think, well, okay, let's see if it's systemic. Well, let's look back at the record of this coach. How many heat injuries have occurred under his watch? Kind of funny. You can't seem to find any of that information in any of the stories that are being put out. Why is that missing? You have to ask yourself, if this was a systemic problem, you would think that this coach would have issue after issue with players being hurt or injured due to heat exhaustion. Well, what was the temperature outside? I mean, did he have them working out in 100+ degree weather? Interesting. They seem to gloss over the fact, I've only seen it mentioned in one story, that on the date in question, it was about 80 degrees outside. So if there was a history of dehydration, you would think that it was systemic. There was no water available. There was no hydration, system. There was no hydration plan for the team on the practice field. However, they don't address that. Why is it that they're not talking? Because that if there was not Gatorade or water or Powerade or whatever Pedialyte available to these players, if that stuff was not available to them while they were practicing, that would have been the first indictment of this coach. But instead, they talk about how he hurts players' feelings, how he intimidates them, how he belittles them. Well, I'm sorry, but Maryland, whatever happens to that university from here on out, I'm sorry, but they probably brought it on themselves. Because what they did was they basically raised the white flag and gave in to a bunch of wieners, to a bunch of crybabies, to a bunch of snowflakes. Let me tell you about the kids who are on that student government body. I know, I've been to college. I've graduated from college. Number one, if they got time to be on student government, they're mostly a bunch of losers. Yeah, I said it. They're a bunch of losers. And I don't say that because they're not popular kids. I'm saying that because clearly their field of study that they've chosen, their major, is cupcake. Because if you were studying a hard major, you don't have time to be running around doing those things. You don't have time to be running around worrying about the football coach. Okay? Much less making football games. And then that's the other thing. They bowed down to a bunch of kids, most likely, just because I know, what the demographic is. Those kids didn't even support the football team in the first place. The kids who are in student government probably would be happy if the whole entire program was shut down. So why, if you are the athletic director, the president of the school, would you care about a bunch of students' opinions who do not have the best interest of the football program at heart? Lastly, the lack of balance in reporting. Well, anonymous sources say that he was this, and this. Anonymous sources say ex-players and current players that he was this, and this, and they were happy to see him gone, or they were upset that he was reinstated. Okay, I believe that. But where's the balance? You're telling me no player, no current player, no former player, no current staffer, no current assistant coach was supportive of him? Not one? Not one single person in the program supported this coach? I can't believe that. So that means that you have to read between the lines. We all know that there's a propaganda wiener softy tilt to the media when it comes to the mainstream media about everything. You see masculinity constantly attacked. It's toxic masculinity, right? We never talk about toxic femininity, but toxic masculinity. And basically, what is the most testosterone, most masculine associated sport on a college campus? It's football. It's the most notable one. Okay? It's the one that draws the most amount of attention, the most amount of eyes. And this was extremely foolish on Maryland's part. And now they've set in motion a standard that anytime somebody has hurt feelings, the facts don't matter, data doesn't matter, only a loud minority's feelings now matter. Welcome to an era of mediocrity, Terrapins. Welcome. You will never, ever, ever be a power in your conference or in college football for at least probably more than a decade. I'm going to say about 2 decades. Why? Because if I'm any kind of college football coach that is worth my salt, I'm staying away from you by a 10-foot pole. I can't yell at my kids. I can't tell them they're playing like crap. I can't tell them that they're a bunch of sissies and pansies. I can't go over there to that player that I know still has it in them and grab them by their face mask, grab them by their doggone shoulder pads, pick them up and tell them, son, you need to pick yourself up and start acting like a sorry piece of crap because you're better than this. I can't tell my kid that because I'm going to hurt his feelings. Utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. All right, guys. So that was my red pill moment for this show. If that's offensive, I don't know. I guess leave a comment. All right, guys. So that's enough for the college football and the red pill commentary. Let's go ahead and move on. So I want to play a little game of musical quarterback, or name that quarterback, if you will. And this is along the lines of the idea of the bias of low expectations. So I'm going to basically go through some stats for you from 3 different quarterbacks, and then we're going to talk about what the storyline is for each one of these quarterbacks right now. So quarterback number 1, had 6 TDs to 10 INTs, has passed for about 1,181 yards, has a current rating of 74.7. Now, over the last 3 years, they've actually had a pretty good quarterback rating. Back in 2017, it was 92.2 for the season. In 2016, it was 86.1. And passing yards total was 3,504 yards and 4,090 yards for 17 and 16 respectively, with TDs of 19 and 28 respectively, as well as 11 to 18 interceptions respectively. So that's quarterback number 1. Quarterback number 2 has a rating of 87.4, 8 TDs to 4 INTs this season. 2017, they passed for 3,324 yards with a quarterback rating of 86.4. And then in 2016, passed for 3,667 yards and had a quarterback rating of 104.9, which is amazing quarterback rating, but quite a drop off between 16 and 17. Quarterback number 3 this year has 8 TDs to 6 interceptions with 2,377 yards and a quarterback rating of 90.9. In 2017, this quarterback passed for 3,468 yards with a quarterback rating of 80.4. Not fantastic, but not completely horrible. And in 2016, passed for 4,027 yards and had a quarterback rating of 86.0. So quarterback 1 currently is basically being thrown under the bus with his 74.7 quarterback rating and 1,181 yards. However, it's interesting to note that over his career, his quarterback average rating has pretty much been in the 80s. It's never really been higher. He has thrown for, right around between 3,000 and 4,000 yards every single year. He's never been he's never been a fantastic quarterback, but he's been serviceable. But this guy just basically, everyone's throwing him under the bus. Quarterback A. It is time to bench him. It is time to go in a new direction for his team to go in a new direction. Quarterback 2, with 8 TDs and 4 INTs and a quarterback rating of 87.4. Okay. We are being told that the narrative is to take time, that they've shown the glimmer of being fantastic. That was the year they had a quarterback rating of 104.9. And that because they've shown a glimmer of being fantastic, you should really hold off judgment, give them time, let them continue to work. And next, quarterback number 3 has a very long career, has done very, very well, has an average quarterback rating of 83.8, and that's including rookie years as well as down years for the entire team, has consistently thrown for over 3,000 yards per season, has consistently thrown 20 plus TDs per season, and has a quarterback rating of 90.9, more TDs to interceptions, and has almost doubled the amount of yards for this year. Can you guess these quarterbacks? I'll tell you this. The first 2 quarterbacks, both are being judged by a different standard because they were both drafted in the first round. Quarterback number 2 was drafted, I believe, in the 4th round, and thus is being given a pass. Quarterback number 1 is Jameis Winston of the Tampa Bay Bucks. He has 6 TDs to 10 INTs and a quarterback rating of 74.7. And across the board, just about every NFL analyst is calling for Jameis Winston to be benched, for the Tampa Bay Bucks to go in a different direction. I really feel like the only reason why they're measuring Jameis's progress or lack thereof is because of his high draft status. Quarterback number 3, we're going to skip number 2 for now, is Eli Manning. He has nearly double the yards. He does have double the yards of quarterback 1, Jameis Winston. He nearly has double the yards of quarterback number 2, and he has a higher quarterback rating. He has 2 more interceptions to TDs, but I think because you got so many more yards and so much offensive production, I think that you would be fair to say, if you wanted to judge these 2 quarterbacks directly against each other, you would say Eli is probably still having the better of the seasons right now. And again, I believe Eli Manning is being judged on 2 reasons. Number 1, high expectations because of his draft status. And number 2, because he is getting paid a fair amount of money, right? Now, let's look at quarterback number 3. Quarterback number 3 was drafted in the 4th round. Very low expectations, but came in taking the place of a very good quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks at the time in the league. Went down with injury in the preseason, and that is when Dak Prescott stepped into the starting quarterback role. He did an amazing job in his rookie year, right? He had 3,667 yards, quarterback rating of 104, 23 TDs to 4 INTs. However, since that time, Dak Prescott has not looked to be at that form. Now, everybody has pretty much told us that the reason for this is that Dak doesn't have any weapons. But in all actuality, I think what it is that there's a low expectation on Dak. Because he was a 4th round draft pick, because he has that whole Cinderella feel. There's nothing the media likes more than to sell you a Cinderella story. So they're trying to sell you this Cinderella story of Dak Prescott. And what Dak doesn't understand is they win no matter what. If Dak fails, they're going to have a heyday tearing Dak down. He wasn't what we thought he was, and he plays for America's team, so Dallas is just bad. Everybody loves that narrative because Dallas either being really good or really bad is one of the best narratives in sports to sell basically airtime and commercials. That's just the truth of it. Same with the Yankees. Really, really bad Yankees teams or really, really good Yankee team, it doesn't matter. It's good for the media business. Mediocre Dallas Cowboy teams, mediocre Yankee teams, not so much. So here we have it. Dak is underperforming. If you had your choice between the two quarterbacks, I think Eli Manning, definitely at this point in the season is outperforming Dak Prescott. Now, Dak has been given some tools. He has a good offensive line. He has Ezekiel Elliott. He's always had Ezekiel Elliott. Now he's getting Amari Cooper. People think that the Dallas trade was all about Amari. It was not. This trade was also about Dak. They wanted to know if they should go ahead and pony up the dough this offseason for Dak, or if they needed to keep their pocketbook closed and possibly start developing or looking for another quarterback. There will be no more excuses. The excuses before were all of last season, everything got thrown on Dez. Dez got thrown under the bus. Dez has too many drops. Dez doesn't run precise routes. Dez isn't a flexible enough receiver. He can only play the X. Blah, 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 blah. He puts too much pressure on Dak to throw him the ball. All these other things. So now, Amari, being a quiet, go-to-work, lunch pail type of guy, isn't going to make a lot of noise. I think he will command the ball, but I don't think he's going to make a lot of noise outside of the locker room. Won't call much attention to himself. Amari is known for running very good routes. He's gotten much, much better since he left college. He does have some of the dropsies, or at least he did last season. He didn't have the first 2 years, so hopefully he'll go back to that form. And he is flexible. He can play different positions as far as wide receiver. Now, too many of the talking heads are saying, well, you can't put him in the slot, though. You got to put him in the X because Cole Beasley, blah, 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 blah. Okay, these people are people that are just looking to make stories. And how do you know that? You know that because these same people have been bashing Jason Garrett for not being imaginative enough and for being a vanilla offense. Yet they're calling for Amari Cooper to be played in a vanilla offense. They banged and banged on Dez for not being quote unquote flexible enough to play anything but the X. But here's Amari Cooper, and the only thing he can play is the X because you don't want to take that away from Cole Beasley. It's just nonsense. So all in all, what you know is that Dak got a new deep threat. With the way that Gallup has been developing this season, he now has 3 legitimate wide receivers, one of which is a legitimate number 1, that being Amari Cooper. He has a bona fide safety blanket in Cole Beasley, and he has the best running back in the NFL, Zeke Elliott. They maybe no longer have the best offensive line, but it's still up there. It's definitely top 5 offensive lines in the league. And it's definitely top 5 running offenses in the league. So there's a lot of pressure on Dak. Have no doubt about that. And this offensive coaching staff has done an outstanding job of finding a way to manufacture points when everybody in the stadium, Everybody in the state the Cowboys were playing in, whether they were home or away, knew Zeke Elliott was the number one threat. Now, they have some way to take pressure off of Zeke. If Dak cannot capitalize on some of the open looks, man-to-man coverages that he's going to get both with Amari and Beasley, as well as the occasional one-on-one matchup with Gallup, then that basically means Dak is not the guy. I just think that it's time. Either he steps up or it's time for the Cowboys to walk away. All right, guys, that's what I have for the NFL. There's some pretty interesting stuff going on around the league. Had some fun games, and we get to check out what Amari Cooper looks like with the Dallas Cowboys. He's had nearly 2 weeks with them to get prepared for this game. Hopefully, it's a fun one. All right, guys, as usual, brought to you by Open Source Self-Defense, Fitness, and Grappling. Be practical, be purposeful, get fit with a purpose, and remember, keep taking your daily